Foster Brother Marine presents Countdown to the Walleye Opener with Steve Panaz.
Hey guys, welcome to Foster Brothers Countdown to Opener. Can you believe, Chad, that the opener is only, 8-10 days away?
Yeah, we're right there.
Yeah, next week this time I'll be loading the boat and we're going to be heading out and going to spend some time. I think I'm going to hit Winnie this year just for something different. We'll see what happens. I'm actually in Minnesota right now, guys. I'm at my buddy Dale's. That's why the background looks a little different right now. So it's a ton of fun right now. Hey, Chad, I got my boat out of storage. Stopped over at Foster Brothers. Got everything hooked up and rigged up and stuff. Took it over, cleaned it up, dropped it in the lake tonight. Everything's running well. In fact, I even shot a photo. I think I have a photo of that thing. Yeah, check this out.
There it is.
Garmin's running fine on the dash. I didn't have the bow on, and the cool thing was there was a couple guys fishing from shore, throwing little crappie baits, and they were pulling bass in left and right. One of the guys had 4 fish in like 5 minutes. So I think we're going to have a good opener this year, guys.
I think so too, yeah.
Should be kind of a ton of fun. Hey, our goal tonight is to get you ready for fishing opener. Get you prepared with some techniques, have some fun, and just kind of get you worked up for the opener. We've got a really interesting show tonight. We've got a lot of top talent coming in. Mark Holsten is going to stop in a few minutes. We're going to cover ripping baits, and by ripping baits, I mean things like the Berkeley Finisher, which is a new product, the Johnny Darter. One of my favorites is actually the War Pig, and I got to show you a picture real quick. This is a 12-pound walleye we caught over in Green Bay with Brett Alexander a few years back on a silver and blue War Pig. And just a couple minutes after that, we had another fish in that 8.5, 9-pound range. So that's a bait that if you're not fishing some of the ripping baits, you really need to learn that. And then Smooth Moves Pro, actually the original founder of Smooth Moves, Bret King, is going to be here, and he's going to be guiding down at the Governor's Fishing Opener in Lake City next week. And so we're going to talk about river walleye techniques and how to get set up for that and have some fun with that. So that should be really good. Then Danny Thompson from Garmin is going to come in. We're going to talk a little bit more about LiveScope, but we're going to talk more about techniques and where LiveScope shines and what, where it can help you get yourself on some fish and really enjoy it. And the thing is, boat companies are actually starting to come out. Skeeter's actually coming out now with boats designed specifically for LiveScope and forward-facing sonars, so you can both stand up at the bow and target fish. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then former DNR Commissioner Mark Holsten is going to be here. He's now head of MinFish as executive director. And we're going to talk a little bit about anglers, kind of yelling on Facebook and other social media things, but really, how can we work together as anglers and really present our voices to the legislature, to the DNR, to make sure that things like stocking and some of the other issues that are affecting our fishing in our state kind of go our way on things like that. And then Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods is going to give an update on the big lake. I know lake levels are a question. I know the ice is out up there. They had a phenomenal spring on the Rainy River. So I'm hoping that transfers over to the open season. But I know you were just up there sturgeon fishing last week. And I mean, it amazes me based on how good the fishing is up there right now that there was actually talk where they wanted to look at listing lake sturgeon as an endangered species or a threatened or endangered species. And man, with all the work that's gone on Rainy River and Ottertail River, St. Croix, Mississippi, it's not that case here. And so that was a good thing that we just get pushed through. So I think that's good on that. Hey, Chad, we got Foster Brothers got an event this weekend. It's called the Icebreaker. It's this Saturday or May 5th at Lord Fletcher's on Lake Minnetonka. They're going to have a number of boats there. So if you want to test drive some boats on the water, this weekend at Lord Fletcher's is a great time. It starts at 10 a.m. at Lord Fletcher's. So check it out. It's called the Foster Brother Open Icebreaker event. Hey, we got some prizes tonight. Everybody that's tuned in tonight, you got a chance to win a couple of great prizes. We're going to give them away at the end of the show. So, Chad, can you kind of share some details about them?
Well, Omnia Fishing Steve, and we were talking before the show how you've been using this just recently. Omnia Fishing's Premium Pro membership, $49 value, and we're going to give that away tonight. The Omnia Premium Pro app is fantastic with depth contours, bottom composition, water temperature, water clarity, and the wind direction and everything else. Really fantastic. So share, comment, and you can get a shot at the Premium Pro app, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to give away the Berkley Power Switch, the Powerbait Power Switch, which is another fantastic early season bait. I know you and I have both loved this one. So,
yeah, it's going to be something we're going to talk with Mark Kortz here in just a minute. I see Mark just pulled in. I believe Mark, let's bring in Mark Kortz, guys. He's Skeeter Pro, Walleye Pro, and Bass Pro. Mark Kortz. Hey, I think you're over in Green Bay. Is that correct? You're live there, dude.
Marco, you're on.
I don't know if he can hear us right now.
Well, maybe not.
Mark, can you hear us? Chad, let's do this. Why don't you give him a call? Let's bring in Danny Thompson for a bit, and we'll go right into kind of the LiveScope stuff.
Sure, you bet.
Hey, Danny, good to see you, man. You've been on the road a bunch, it looks like.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's been going really well. I drove into Minnesota Monday, 16-hour drive, but the roads are great, and it's so fun to see all the lakes and the water, and for us to get a chance to get out. I actually dropped the boat in today. I was showing a friend of mine LiveScope. We found mega schools of crappie right off of a shoreline break, and I was pointing out the fish and watching them swim up, and it was kind of fun. But hey, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight in terms of LiveScope is specifically walleye fishing. There's been a lot of talk about LiveScope. I know the National Team Walleye event, or the National Walleye Tour event on Lake Erie, was just won using forward-facing sonar to target fish. But what are some of the techniques that you're hearing? And you and I have done a number of it. We were on Waibay last year. We've been on Mille Lacs. We've been on Winnie targeting walleyes. But what are some of the techniques that you're finding that a lot of anglers are still using LiveScope to catch walleyes?
You know, the cool thing I think about all this forward-facing sonar stuff and technique specifically is the fact that we've just opened up a whole new and possibly old can of worms when it comes to fishing for walleyes with forward-facing sonar. And, you know, in the past, we'd really kind of just sit there and we'd pull a leech and we'd pull a rig or pull a minnow or something like that. And, you know, we'd either rig, we'd troll, every once in a while we'd do a little bit of jigging. And, you know, to a certain extent, that really was kind of all we did. Now, I mean, with forward-facing sonar, I mean, we were literally in the front of these boats and we are essentially bass fishing for walleyes. I mean, slip bobber rigs, very precise slip bobber rigs. There's slip bobbers now that are made to be better at casting in the wind and being more exact on those spots. And the slip bobber rigs that we're using, there's rods that just continue to get better and better for slip bobber fishing. Pure Fishing has an amazing line of forward-facing sonar optimized baits right now with the Finisher, the Power Switch, the Credge, obviously. But that Power Switch for walleye fishing, I mean, you can work that thing. You can cast it a mile. You can work it slow. You can work it quickly, and just really try to get that thing in front of the fish and be able to get the reaction with them, because we can see them on the forward-facing sonar, which is really cool. And then, you know, the Finisher, I haven't got to use that in open water yet. It works great ice fishing.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to try that now on open water this summer as well, because, you know, like I said, I mean, we're in the front of the boat and I might have multiple rods laying there on the deck with me, and I'll throw a slip bobber at them. And if they don't want that, I'll go after them with a Power Switch, and then, you know, maybe finish them with the Finisher, because it just, you can see their mood and kind of what's going on, and really kind of dial in which baits are working so much quicker than what we were able to in the past.
So a few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, Danny, you and I were on Mille Lacs, and we're fishing one of the southern, something out of Indian Point, and some structure out there. And we would move up on the structure. It was 27, 28 feet of water. And then we'd see these small pods of walleyes on LiveScope. We're talking 4 to 5, maybe 6 fish. And it was accurate enough for us to cast a leech on a slip bobber, and you could watch the jig go down. You could watch the walleyes react. 2 things stood out to me that day. Number one is how aggressively they charged those baits. I always assumed they'd come up to those leeches on a jig and just kind of suck it in. No, they were running from several feet and just smoking it that particular day. And the one thing that stood out for me that one day is we got out there in the morning, and I had a bright chartreuse jig on. I don't remember what you were using, but I remember watching several fish slide into you could watch them come flying up to the bait and at the last minute turn away. And it happened 3, maybe 4 times. And then I realized they don't like the color of the jig.
Yeah.
And it was really educational for me to kind of look at that. The second thing that really stood out is anytime we saw suspended walleyes, we're talking fish down 8, 10, 12 feet below the surface in 25, 38 feet of water.
Yep.
Those were always giant fish. These were those 27, 28, 29s. And those are fish you would never be able to efficiently target without LiveScope. And it made for a really interesting day.
Absolutely. And the thing about that, Stephen, I've actually been using the closing to that show in a seminar that I've been giving on fishing with forward-facing sonar and techniques. And, one comment that I think you make at the end of that show is, we're fishing LiveScope with bobbers, and we say this is a technique that's going to be around for a long time. And it really is. And we're just proving that it's kind of revolutionizing the way we walleye fish in Skeeter boats right now with that new WXR. I mean, we've got a walleye boat with a new front end, a bow on it that gives room for 2 big guys like me and you to stand in the front of this boat and literally jump on the Kraken trolling motor and search with LiveScope and fish out of the front of that boat.
You know what's interesting? So I stopped at Foster Brothers yesterday to grab my own boat. And they have that boat on the show floor right now. And those are my size 11 feet on the right side. And you just see how much room now. And they're actually building that boat specifically so 2 guys, even 2 guys our size, to get up in front of the boat and target these fish, which I thought was really interesting. Hey, you really started fishing a lot of with the not necessarily on the bow or the transom. You actually mounted these on the transom. Talk a little bit about your experience using Panoptics and LiveScope on the transom when you're trolling or even rigging and things like that.
Yeah, one cool thing with having a transom mounted LiveScope, and now disclaimer, the LVS 32 did work a lot better as a transom mounted LiveScope, just the way it was shaped and whatnot. But having a transom mounted LiveScope really works well for those times when you're just kind of running around and checking structure quickly, and we want to be able to pull up to a point and something like that, see if there's fish on it before we move on to the next spot. And in the scenario of having it on the transom, I don't even have to drop my pole in on the side of the boat. I don't have to get up, put the trolling motor down. I can literally, as we always talk with fishing, and especially forward-facing sonar, we're trying to be quick. We're trying to be efficient and, really see, where that structure is, where those fish are on that structure before we kind of jump in and start fishing them essentially.
That's amazing. Mark, I think, is over in Green Bay, Door County, and I think he's fishing one of the bass events in there, and he's struggling to be able to get in. I think he's got an internet issue over there. So I may ask you to stay with us for just a little bit longer if you don't mind. If we can get Mark in, I definitely want to. He's texting me right now, having some of the issues on things. Hey, one of the things that we did last year in fishing on Wabe, we were running into a lot of fish in that 18 to 20 feet of water. And you could tell by the attitude of the fish whether we were going to get those fish to bite and not. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of fish behavior on LiveScope.
That's obviously the cool part about LiveScope is we're seeing the fish, and people always ask me about live sonar, and the cool part with it is it's very intuitive because what's happening is live. You're not just looking at an arc on 2D sonar like we have in the past. I'm actually seeing what's happening and what's going on down there. So, in that example there in South Dakota, we tried fishing them in the weeds, And then, we kind of had some hot weather and some calm water and some of that stuff. When we finally could find these pods of fish, we could literally stop. I remember one time we even stopped on top of them and we throw like a jig and a grub down, and these fish would just charge it. And as long as you can kind of get on those active fish, you can see that, and you can see what baits they're reacting to be able to put so many more fish in the boat, which, obviously at the end of the day is our goal for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to move into a little bit of techniques and things. And I showed a picture on rippin baits. And I know, Danny, you're a big fan of rippin baits. And this fish was actually caught on a chrome blue war pig a few years back on Green Bay. And we had another trophy. We had a day with Bret fishing out there one year. We had 10 over 10 in one day, 10 over 10 pounds in one day. Yeah. And there was a stringer caught on Fort Peck last week where the guys had 5 walleyes weighed 60 pounds. They had a 31-inch average. So there's some waters out there that offer that. But one of the cool new baits, and I know you've used this in ice fishing, but I've been using it in open water, and it's a new Berkeley finisher. And it looks like a pretty simple bait. It looks like you got a line tie on top. Think of this as like a Johnny Darter or a bait that you would fish similar to do a jigging wrap. It's more than that, but what's cool about it is when you throw it, it sinks fast, and you can see on the bottom of the bait it actually has a flat finish. And what that allows it to do is so once you rip it up, it glides down. And here's a bait that's specifically designed for fishing with LiveScope. And then that makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. The finisher, I mean, like I said, I got to use it ice fishing, and that's kind of the cool part with the finishers. It comes in all those different sizes. And, I like the power switch when I'm trying to be quick and I'm trying to cover a lot of water. But the finisher, I can throw it a long ways and have it kind of drop and glide down on the fish. But when you pop that thing, there's a lot of action to it. So like you're almost getting a lot of different baits in one, where you get a little bit slower fall than you do with like the Johnny Darter or the power switch. But yet when I pop it, I get a real erratic motion, which really will get the fish to bite. I'm really looking forward to using that thing this summer, because I think not just the walleyes, I think the smallmouth are gonna like that bait as well. Don't tell Mark Holsten that, but I'm actually pretty excited about that bait. I think that's going to be just one of those ones. It's like a go-to. I mean, you almost got a little bit of a cross between like jerk bait and glide bait, and I really think it's going to put a lot of fish on the water.
It's funny. The first time I threw that finisher, I had it in pink, and I went off a bridge on the Madison River, and I was throwing it out in 8-10 feet of water, and I got smashed. And the first fish I caught on it was a 24-inch brown trout, which shocked me. And then the next cast, I had another one. So guys, if you're looking for a bait that does a lot of different things, that finisher is a very unique bait that everybody's raving about it. Another one that is new is called the switch. And I haven't had a chance to fish this much in open water yet. I did use it a lot in the 1 3/4 size for trout last winter, and I had several double-digit days on it. So it's been a phenomenal bait. But that's another one of those bait that has a unique rip action that you can take up and down. And it's another one that you could watch the fish response on LiveScope and really have a ton of fun with it. So that's another one. Have you had a chance to fish it much?
Yeah, I've fished that bait quite a bit, and I got to use it last fall on Lake of the Woods. And that thing, casting for big walleyes on Lake of the Woods, I mean, you can pull that bait so slow across the bottom on the sand like that by those big fish. But then if you get a suspended fish, I mean, you can hang that bait kind of almost like strolling it essentially as we talk nowadays. But, the real benefit of that bait, I think they didn't even intend probably, is they made probably one of the best ice fishing baits on the market right now. I absolutely crushed crappies on those smaller power switches this winter. I absolutely love that bait.
Did you tip the bait at all?
No, not at all.
No, I was actually tipping it on some of the trout and things, but
yeah,
this is one of the baits that it's kind of it's one of those baits that should be fished a lot more than it is for walleyes. This is the war pig, and it's a rattle bait. This is one of those ones that you can rip over the tops of grass. If you're out in July and you've got these huge cabbage stands with big wind blowing over it, This is one of those baits you can throw on 15-pound test, heavy bait casting gear, rip it through there, and you'll be stunned how many big walleyes you'll catch on that. But it's also one of those baits you can cast, let it hit the bottom and rip it up off there. That fish that Brett Alexander had is just one example. We've had fish up in the 8-10 pound class, actually on Lake Independence in the metro. So it's a bait that will trigger strikes in a lot of different conditions. So,
and I think the cool thing with all these baits, Steve, is, traditionally we think of walleye fishing opener that we have to go out there and maybe throw a slip bobber or a jig and a shiner and really kind of fish slow and spot on the spot. But power switch, the war pig, the finisher, those all are going to be great baits on opener. As long as you can get on top of those fish, they're actually going to be a lot more active than you even think they might be, especially this time of year. So I wouldn't be afraid to go out and do some casting in some of that shallower sand and, find the fish on your LiveScope, hit up that sand and try some of these baits. I mean, you'll definitely have success. I've had great success early in the season with baits like that.
That's been phenomenal. Hey, Danny, I've kept you on double. I appreciate it tonight. Good luck. I hope your food plots are getting in. And I'm looking forward. Danny and I are going to actually tape an episode of Lake Commandos in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to tell you right now, he's going down. He's going down. Actually, we're going to target some walleyes, northern Minnesota. We haven't picked a lake yet. I want to see what's happening, what's going on up there, but I'm looking forward to it. And I got a funny feeling, hey, Chad, it's going to involve one of the baits that we just talked about. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, Danny.
Do I get to put in a bet on this or not? No.
Well, what's your bet going to be?
I'll take you, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, he knows who writes the paychecks, I guess.
That's right.
Danny, take care. I appreciate you coming on tonight, and that's kind of fun.
Yep, you guys have a great night.
All right, see you, Danny.
Hey, our next guest tonight is actually the founder of Smooth Moves. If you're looking for a seat system that helps save your back when you're on rough water, and he's also a walleye pro. In fact, he's guiding next week at the Governor's Opener down in Lake City. So I'd like to bring on Bret King. Hey, Bret, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm doing well. Looks like you might be in a hotel room somewhere. Or is that home?
I'm actually down at a kind of a host party for the St. Jude's tournament down in Wabasha. So I excused myself for a few minutes and snuck into a quieter room, and here we are.
So tell us a little bit about your guiding for the Governor's Opener next week. Do you know who you're taking out or anything like that?
I do. I actually have, a couple guys, gentlemen coming in from Yamaha Engine Corporation that wanted to see the heritage of what, the hype around Minnesota Opener or fishing openers was all about. So it worked out perfect this year because it's 15 minutes south of my house. And I'm like, well, if you guys want to see this is a pretty cool opportunity to be part of all this. So we're going to take it all in. It's a little unique to have an opener in Lake City because the river never closes.
Yeah.
But obviously Lake City brought it in and it's all good. Should be fun.
Hey, Bret, so there's been a lot of rain here. The lakes that I've been seeing have been really almost at flood stage. I'm sure the river is really humming right now. How's it shaping up right now for opener?
It's getting there. It's definitely on the rise. It shouldn't be at too bad of a level for next week. It will definitely kind of put the fish into places they should be. And then we always have Lake Pepin that, you kind of have a refuge away from the current out there, but it should be a good bite. Water temp's a little cold. I was out last night for a couple hours, and we're still hovering in that mid to upper 50s.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll get some sun between now and then. It's not looking great.
No, it's not. The weather looks terrible between now and then. There's a little. I do like colder, rainy openers for some reason. Maybe I don't know me because I hate sunscreen or not, but it seems like the fishing tent can be really good. Hey, if someone wanted to talk about maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 techniques for river walleyes, what is your favorite technique for fishing river walleyes?
Well, when the water temp's a little colder like this and it's post spawn, I really like to pull like a 3-way rig with a Phelps floater and a hook. Just pull that slowly upstream, in the current seams, things like that. Last night I was actually out playing with what's known around here as a Denver rig. It's a jointed Shad Rap crankbait rig with a jig below it. You can fish 2 lines here legally, and that constitutes your 2 lines. And that's a really good run and gun tactic to run and hit these short little stretches in the river. And we caught a few. It wasn't great, but it was decent.
So when you're rigging that, are you tying that off the back hook, or what, the middle hook? Or how do you rig that particular rig?
Come off a 3-way swivel.
Yep.
Go about 3 to 4 feet back to the crankbait and a snap.
Yep.
Put that on. And then I'll come off the bottom dropper with like a 5/16 jig and a plastic.
And plastics. What kind of plastics are you running?
Usually a paddle tail of some sort. I've got one from Big Bait Bites, or Big Bite Baits, that I like real well.
Okay.
Very consistent. Nothing big. It's a smaller one, but geez, it's amazing how many you'll catch on that jig at 1 to 1.5 miles an hour, trolling it upstream. It's fun. I do it with spinning rods, so it's very quick to deploy.
Yep.
Like I just pull into the little run I want to make and cast it out and go.
So on that 3-way rig, the last time I fished an MWC at Lake City, it was brutally cold. It was like 30 degrees in the morning in May. It actually hurt to run up river. The waves were just crashing and burning. And the first day of the tournament, I went up into the river and trolled cranks, just because I had a partner that had never even fished walleyes before, and I wanted to make it as easy as possible. But the second day, we had calm conditions. We went out with 3-way rigs. We did run the Phelps floaters. And what was interesting was we'd rig that crawler. We'd push it all the way to the Phelps floater and then have it. So the crawler was actually positioned with a big bend in it.
Yep.
We pinched that crawler off, and then when it would come through the water, it was spinning. We pulled up on a reef out in the lake, not that far north of the landing. And I bet you within 2 hours, we had between 50 and 60 walleyes. And our first fish was 7.5 pounds. Our second fish was like 6.5 pounds. What a dynamite technique. And it's very easy to fish that way. And I love the fact that you could rig 2 rods. So when you're trolling, you could actually have both rods going. Are you running anything else other than crawlers on the Phelps floaters?
Leeches.
Leeches.
I'll definitely be running some leeches. Sometimes creek chubs if I'm really hunting bigger fish. So far this year, they've been pretty hard to get a hold of around here. But yeah, I'll be primarily pulling night crawlers, half a crawler on there, and then, smaller scale leeches.
And the 3-way, how heavy a sinker are you typically running?
That will depend on the current. Obviously, it's going to change from spot to spot, but typically 2 to 4 ounces about normal.
All right.
In heavier rising water. If the water's lower, obviously I'll downsize.
I know a number of guys were throwing blade baits this spring and catching some real giants. Are you a fan of blade baits in the river?
I mean, they have their place. It's not something I do day in, day out. I'm a big advocate for pitching a jig in a plastic. I mean, it's just one of those techniques. I know if I get them to eat it, I got them, because they'll usually really thump it and inhale it real far. So I tend to lean there first, but there's definitely times where blade baits and baits like a vibrato of that style will dominate a day.
That's awesome. And talk a little bit about the plastics you're using. Are you running mostly like rib type worms, or are you running paddle tails? What are you running typically?
One of my main search baits for sure is a ringworm. That's what I will use to contact fish. And then once I find a pocket that's holding some, I will start to upsize into like a larger paddle tail, a Kalen type tail, bigger profile baits to try to extract a bigger one out of there.
So Bret, one of the things that you developed was the smooth moves. It's really, I guess it would be a shock absorber system for your back. Can you kind of take us through the history of why did you develop that product, and is it still available? I know it's still available.
Yeah.
So tell us some more about that.
For sure. What you just had up there on display, that's next generation past me. The original one I came to market with was a lot different than that one, in capacity. Kevin and Tammy get a lot of credit for bringing that one to the market, the Ultra and the Ultra Air. It's a fantastic suspension system. Unlike automobiles, car or boats don't come with any type of suspension in them to speak of. We have some air ride, quote unquote, pedestals, but they just don't react and give you a true suspension type environment. So back in the day when I first started my professional fishing career, Smooth Moves was one that I developed to sponsor my ways, right? Like that was my sponsor to pay my way fishing. Yep. Instead of going out and soliciting other companies and working for others, I went to work for myself and brought this to market. And it's a really long story that we can't possibly cover in this, but it eventually came to a crossroads. I did that on the side along with another business. I had a school bus company, and it looked like I was going to expand the school bus company. So it just came a point in time where I needed to either go in both feet on the suspension seats or take care of the bus company and sell off the suspension seats. And Kevin Christensen's a guy I've done business with for a long time. We've done a couple different ventures together.
Yep.
And, he said, "Hey, I'll take that." So that's kind of how it all, laid out on the quick version.
Well, bottom line, if you're looking for a way to make sure you keep your back safe and things. Hey, Bret, I know you want to get back to that St. Jude's tournament. Thanks for stopping in. Good luck fishing on opener next week, and look forward to getting in the boat with you sometime soon, man.
All right. Perfect.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Mark Holsten has found a viable Wi-Fi, and time's going to be a little tight tonight, Mark. But hey, I suspect you're over in Green Bay area. Are you fishing some of the bass tournaments over there right now?
Yeah, I'm actually taking off on Monday. I'm actually home. So, yeah, I don't know what was going on with our internet there for a little bit. I was sitting backstage and I just couldn't get on. So now we're on.
Yes. Danny was helping. He's a big fan of a lot of the rippin baits that we've talked about. So I need to keep it short with you because our other guests are in house. But I do want to talk to you about how do you define rippin baits? When do you go with them? And what is your number one favorite bait and favorite tactic for rippin baits?
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, I don't know if there's ever a bad time for rippin baits. And I think we've kind of proven that this year. I mean, we were out at Lake Erie and it was chilly cold and big waves, and they work. So there is not a bad time for rippin bait. My favorite bait right now currently by far is the finisher, strictly because everything we're doing now is forward facing sonar. And when we talk about forward facing sonar, the biggest thing is keeping that bait in your cone. And so with the keys of the finisher, being able to, you can really make that bait be as erratic as you want or as subtle as you want. And I think that's really key. And Berkeley's just done a really good job with the color selection in that particular bait. And the cool thing about it is the Fusion 19 hooks, when you get a fish hooked up on that thing, they do not come off. And we just have natural colors and we have bright colors. So it really covers the whole gamut. But the key is it stays in that angle when you're using your forward facing sonar. Now, if you're not using forward-facing sonar, you get real aggressive with it, and it's going to act like a lot of the other glide baits out there. But this particular bait really stays in that cone angle, and it shows up really well on forward-facing sonar.
So, what's your favorite size in that bait?
Depending on where I'm fishing, if I'm fishing anywhere from 7 to let's say 15 foot, it's going to be the number 7, and when I get deeper, it'll be the number 9.
And are you running this on braid? Are you throwing it on mono? What line are you throwing? A what pound test?
So I'm throwing it on a 10-pound fire line, down to a 10 or 12, even 14-pound, 100% fluorocarbon leader. And it just seems, it doesn't matter if it's crappies, it doesn't matter if it's walleyes. It literally works for every species I've thrown it at.
Talk to me a little bit about the switch. When are you throwing the switch and how are you fishing it?
So the power switch is, real similar to, I don't want to say the finisher. Power switch has a lot more glide to it. That flat bottom of the power switch really gives it that more of a glide. And, you can take your rod tip and really snap this bait, and it covers a ton of water. It can be a real aggressive bait. That color you had up there right now, that's a phenomenal color. And then that shell belt color in the finisher is probably my go-to. But, the unique thing about the power switch is that we offer it in so many sizes. So if you're fishing there again, if you're fishing panfish, or if you're fishing, big pike, we make one for all those sizes. A lake trout, it's a great lake trout bait. It can be fished vertical or it can be casted. So, it's a really unique bait in that. And the cool thing about it is it's power bait and scented. So it's power bait and impregnated.
That's awesome. Hey, Mark, I appreciate you going through the getting in here tonight. I can see you in the studio. We just couldn't hear you, but hey, I look forward to having you on next week again. And this will be the last time we talk before openers. So I'm excited to have you on, and we'll get into detail next week. So I appreciate you coming in.
Sounds good, Steve. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Our next guest is a former DNR commissioner, former legislator for Minnesota. So he knows the ins and outs of what goes on at both the legislature and the DNR. And he's now executive director of MinFish Foundation. Mark Holsten. Hey, Mark, you've been a busy guy the last few weeks. I know the MinFish World's Greatest Fishing Auction just closed about, half hour ago. And how did that end up going?
Actually, it just closed. We had a lot of extended bidding going on. The bidding went on for an extra 20, 25 minutes. So it kind of started slow 2 weeks ago, but it sure ramped up here the last couple of days. And we hit our goal target for what we had out there for items. And thank you to the anglers of Minnesota or the anglers out there who participated in the auction and helped makes MinFish financially viable to go do the work that we do, working with the Department of Natural Resources, working with the state legislature, and trying to influence public policy and financing of fisheries management here in Minnesota. So it was really important, and hats off to those who bid on our stuff. It was great. And by the way, to all the people who donated those items to MinFish so that we could auction those off. I got to really thank those people for giving their time, whether they're the guides, giving up resort stays, equipment. We just had a great selection of stuff, and it went really well.
So, Mark, it was interesting. I was on Facebook earlier today, kind of in prep for the show tonight, but there was a post from the Wisconsin DNR, and all of a sudden there was a blow up of all these anglers saying, "Oh, you guys are screwing up our fishing," and then it got into Minnesota, and it was just. I know anglers want to point fingers, but is it legitimate to say that maybe we should be pointing the fingers at ourselves? And if we're not getting involved in this process, do we have a legitimate gripe, or don't we? You're former DNR commissioner. How can we get things done, like better muskie stocking? I know that things has slowed down, and that kind of stuff. So walk us through that process.
To your overall question, who's to blame? And the answer is yes. It's all of us. It's there's culpability across the board. But anglers, we are, we're a passionate group. Obviously, we're willing to sit in a boat for hours on end and sometimes not catch anything, and so. Griping and bitching comes pretty natural to us, and because we want it to be different. We've been out there, we've been there in the boat during those days around those lakes, and have had those tremendous experiences, and we want every day to be like that. Unfortunately, it's just not the case. To your point of why isn't it that way? These are very dynamic systems. There's a lot of change going on any given month, any given year, any given week. There's just so much change going on in that system that you can't expect the lake to be the same year in, year out. There's going to be changes. And where the management comes in, the DNRs, whether it's Wisconsin, Minnesota, or any of the other DNRs, they're reacting to what they're seeing happen, but also angler expectations and angler wants. And so if you want to see a more robust muskie program, you have to advocate for it. If you want a more robust stocking program, you have to advocate for it. And you've got to get in and talk and interact with the agency and with legislators. You got to interact with the agency so that they understand your passion and needs, and they can try to meet your expectations. But you got to interact with the legislators to make sure that the funding comes forward for that level of management that you want and you demand. That's where we're lacking anglers. We haven't stepped up as anglers, make the demands. We're quick to bitch. I'm sorry, but we are. And but stepping up and trying to influence what's happening. You know, Minfish talked about this over the last couple of years when we were advocating for trying to rebuild or modernize our hatcheries and our public access system. And the motto we kept talking about to anglers was, if we're not asking, they're not giving. That's the problem with the legislature. If you're not there asking them for money, if you're not asking them to direct monies to programs or to projects, they're not giving. You can't just assume they know what you want. So,
a good example. Yeah, Mark, a good example. And I think Dennis Anderson did a great piece this past Sunday on the Waterville hatchery that's just got $20 million to rebuild. And, you know, for the last 50 plus years, they've been running a hatchery out of essentially a garage down there. And it's the most important hatchery for the southern half of the lake, southern half of the state. But hatcheries are just one of the issues I think that anglers are really concerned about. The walleye limit, there's talk about bass maybe being open year round, muskie stocking, and then the carp control as the Asian carp continue to move up the Mississippi River. We need to make sure that people, especially the DNR and the legislature, understand these issues, and who better than anglers to step up and let them know what's going on.
You said it very well. I can't say it any better than that. It takes a voice to be there and letting people know where things are. So one of the things that we're doing, Minfish, is next week we're going to hold our third fisheries summit. We have the DNR coming in. We're going to talk about Lake Mille Lacs and the 2024 regulation package. A lot of controversy around that this spring. It caught people by surprise as to why the regulation is so tight. So we're going to let the agency lay out their modeling, lay out their methodology, and their thought processes of why that regulation has to be so tight. And then we're going to have some time to interact with them, have questions and answers specifically on that regulation package, on that methodology, on that data system, data set that they have. So that'll be great. And then we're going to have a panel of fisheries managers, and we're going to talk about the future of fisheries management, what that looks like, and what the needs are looking out. And as Steve, you sat in on a meeting we had, Minfish had kind of an educational meeting a couple weeks ago one evening. I think there's going to be some people who are surprised by what they learn about the health of Minnesota DNR's fisheries management and what they don't have for tools and resources to their disposal.
Well, they've lost a lot of staffing in the last, 15 years. And I think that's affected their ability to manage some of the smaller lakes. And I think that DNR needs, I mean, bottom line is fishing and boating generates well over almost $300 million in taxes. And we're not investing that back in the sport. And I think that's a key. So bottom line is I've been involved with Minfish. You've been running Minfish. I mean, it's really been an effective voice. So if anglers want to get involved, and we hope anglers get involved, support Minfish, put your voice, join the organization, support it financially if you're able to. But bottom line is help us get the things done that we need to get done at the legislature and at the DNR.
Right. You're right. And Steve, you know this, Minfish has gone through a lot of changes since the beginning in 2018.
Yes.
A very different organization today than it was at the beginning of 2018. It's going to continue to adapt and change, but it's only going to change in the direction that anglers want it to. So for those anglers who step in and financially support us and lean in and put a shoulder into Minfish to help support it and express what they want to see happen, that's going to control and direct the future of what Minfish is going to do and the successes that we'll have.
That's awesome. Hey, Mark, I know you're preparing for that summit, so I'm going to let you go tonight. Thank you for stopping by. And if anybody is interested in learning more about Minfish, if you haven't heard about it, it's min-fish.com and sign up for the newsletters so you stay informed. And if you can get involved, get involved. We need your voice to help get things done. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming by. I will see you in St. Paul. I'm planning to get to the summit. So
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it should be a great time. All right, everybody. That was Mark Holsten. What's been interesting is Mark has really helped me personally understand the process of what goes on at the legislature. And then having meetings with guys like Brad Parsons and Sarah Stroman. The DNR is in good hands. I just think that their hands are tied in a lot of situations. And if we can raise our voices and help fix those issues, I think we're all going to benefit going forward. Hey, one of my favorite fisheries in the world is Lake of the Woods. And I know there's been a tremendous walleye bite up there this spring. The river was just on fire. And one of the biggest advocates for Lake of the Woods is this man here, Joe Henry, former fullback at St. John's University, by the way. So don't mess with him. He's a tough dude. But hey, Joe, you guys just got off a tremendous spring on the Rainy River. The sturgeon fishing is off the charts. I heard somebody in a recent tournament had 40 some fish in the boat in a day or two or whatever. But talk to us a little bit about the conditions. I heard water levels are coming up. I'm assuming the ice is all off. You guys are ready to roll for opener. How are things shaping up?
Thanks, Steve. Things are shaping up awesome. So we had a really, Lake of the Woods, because we're border water with Canada, we have that extended walleye season compared to the rest of the state of Minnesota. So, we can actually fish walleyes through April 14th. Our fishing this spring was really, really good. 100, 200 fish per day, a lot of monster fish. And, on the Rainy River, it's a catch and release situation from March 1st all the way to through April 14th. Now, our Minnesota fishing opener begins on May 11th, Saturday, May 11th. And, it's shaping up to be excellent. We had a really, really good ice fishing year. And, on the lake, we actually fished all the way well through March and, almost into April. So we know those fish are still there along that south shore, as well as up in the northwest angle. And we know there's fish in the river. So, we believe we're very optimistic for our opener. We think it's going to be just excellent. You had mentioned the sturgeon fishing. Sturgeon fishing this spring has been second to none. When you hear about 30 or 40 fish per boat per day in their sturgeon, it's unbelievable. I saw you had Danny on with Garmin, and a lot of people are using LiveScope in today's world, and to have 6 sturgeon on your LiveScope screen at the same time, that's just, and they're big fish. You can totally tell their silhouette, and they're huge.
Yeah, they're fun to watch.
It's interesting. It's neat.
Yeah, it is. So early in the season, I know there's a lot of jig and minnow situation. Are there other techniques that have been effective? Early spring, if someone's preparing to come to Lake of the Woods, how should they get ready for opener this year?
The go-to technique is going to be a jig and a minnow. And when I say jig and a minnow, frozen emerald shiners. The emerald shiner is a natural forage of Lake of the Woods walleyes. And, that silver shiner, it's got the scales, it's got the scent. And then, taking a jig, and I'll tell you something, it's stained water. So the walleyes aren't so particular. you can get away with a little bit bigger jig. And that's important because if you get a little bit of wind, or maybe there's a little bit of current, or maybe you're fishing with somebody who isn't just a real sophisticated stick. You know what I mean? They're newer to angling. Having a little bigger jig on there is easier to control, and you can feel bottom better. And then taking that emerald shiner, Steve, and when you hook that emerald shiner, we always say, hey, hook it through the mouth, out the gills, and push that shiner all the way up on that jig head as you can, and hook that hook to about the mid body of that shiner. It's going to give you more hookups on walleyes. You know, in Lake of the Woods, in other bodies of water, I might use my trolling motor, maybe drift a little bit more when I'm jigging. On Lake of the Woods, for whatever reason, you know, those walleyes really like it when you're anchored up and just vertical jigging over the side of the boat. In fact, you'll talk to our charter captains on our charter boats, and they'll tell you that they believe it actually gets a little bit better fishing after about 20 minutes. You're almost creating an ecosystem on your boat between the shiners and the scales and the scent. You know, more fish activity. You catch a few fish. They're fighting on the way up. All that activity draws more fish, and you're almost creating a better scenario under your boat the more time that goes on.
So what is the current law up there in terms of the limit? I know you got the sauger and the walleye in there. What's the current bag limit up there?
Yep. So on Lake of the Woods, you can catch a combined limit of up to 6 fish. Up to 4 of those 6 can be walleyes. We also have a slot limit for our walleyes, 19.5 to 28 inches. You must release those fish. Take a good picture, get a good memory, let those fish go to breed again and to reproduce. It gives sustainability to our fishery. You can keep 1 walleye over 28 inches per day. And of course, you're going to keep your fish under 19.5, which actually those are the best eaters anyway.
You know, one of the overlooked fish in the Lake of the Woods systems are actually those trophy northern pike. And you and I have put some big fish in the boat. Yeah. But that's another option for anglers this time of year. What are some of the spots that are typically still good? I know the river can be excellent for big pike. Where are some of the bays that are still producing or would?
Yeah, 100%. Well, you know, Steve, to your point, the Minnesota DNR actually manages Lake of the Woods to be a trophy pike lake. So their limit on pike on Lake of the Woods is 3 fish per day. And any pike 30 to 40 inches, you got to let it go. You can keep 1 over 40 inches per day. And there are a ton of them in that lake, over 40 inches. I had a resort owner ask me recently, what are we going to do about our pike problem? I go, what pike problem is that? He said, "Those pike, too many big pike, you're eating too many walleyes." I go, well, I'm not worried about that, you know. You talk about the different bays. You know, we just had a pike tournament on Zipple Bay, and that's an annual pike tournament. They got a bunch of big pike in there. But, you know, Bostic Bay, 4 Mile Bay, I mean, all those bays will hold fish. In fact, when those big females go up, a lot of times they go in the back bays, but some of them are actually going up into ditches and stuff too, getting way away from the lake and that shallower water and doing their deal. And we're loaded with pike. Pike get attention in March when they're tip-up fishing, and they get some attention right now when they're back in the bays and stuff. And, you know, the rest of the year, boy, everybody's so walleye crazed, you know, that they don't pay much attention. You get them accidentally when you're fishing for walleyes.
It's funny. Elizabeth Marsh just mentioned, she goes, she'd love to catch a sturgeon. And I'm saying, well, get your butt up there because it's a fun bite. But the last time I was there, we were actually targeting smallmouth on some of the shallow rock reefs and light gear. And I hooked I don't know how big it was, a big sturgeon, and actually decided to fight it out. And it was somewhere close to an hour before we got that fish in the boat. And even then it wouldn't fit in the net that we had. So we had to hand land it. But what a memory. And the friend that I was fishing with, he actually made an acrylic picture of it, and I got it in my office back at home. So it's kind of fun. Hey, Joe, if somebody is interested in booking a trip, talk about the difference between some of the resorts that are on the river and the South Shore and the Northwest Angle. What's the difference in the fishing experience itself, or maybe the lodging?
Yeah, well, you know, first off, you know, first thing you got to kind of think about is, hey, what part of Lake of the Woods do we want to go to? And I break Lake of the Woods up into 3 different areas. First off, you have the Rainy River. And of course, there's 42 miles of navigable Rainy River, all the way from the mouth of the river, all the way through Baudette to Birchdale, Minnesota. That's one section. The other part is the South Shore. And the South Shore is adjacent to Big Traverse Bay. Big Traverse Bay is a big open water of Lake of the Woods. That's about 30 miles north-south by about 25 miles east-west. That's big water. Great big flat basin. There's a few reefs that pop out in spots, but it's big flat basin. The deepest spot in that whole big body of water is only 38 feet deep, and it is loaded with walleyes and saugers and a ton of forage, plethora. And then, of course, the third area is that northwest angle. And that northwest angle is a little tip of Minnesota that sticks up into Canada. That's the northernmost point of the contiguous U.S., and that's where the 14,552 islands of Lake of the Woods begin. So, you of course, fishing, when we have a stained water system, the tannins from the adjacent bogs in our watershed will naturally stain the water. So it's got a little coffee tint to it, a little bit tinted. And that makes it good because the walleyes and saugers bite during the day. You know what? First off, you got the river. There's going to be fish in the river for the opener. Jigging is going to be the most popular way to get them. Secondly, when you're fishing that basin, there's going to be fish, pods of walleyes and saugers that are going to be lined up in different spots along that entire South Shore. And there's a lot of different schools of fish that'll be working there. And they're after different minnows and hatches coming out of the mud and everything else. Go out there and you get out in that anywhere from 15 to 25 feet of water. You're going to mark those fish. You're going to mark pods of bait. You anchor up. You sit for about 20 minutes and see how you do. If not, you'll move. You'll see boats catching fish all over. And then up at the angle, because of the structure, Steve, that's going to be more fish in your traditional points, adjacent to islands, neck down areas where there's maybe a little bit of current going through.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it rolls up there. So pretty diverse fishery, really.
Yeah, one question from Neil Blanker. He said, if you're going to fish the Canadian side of the river, you actually have to have an Ontario license. At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, yep. So you need an Ontario license. He's asking where to buy one also. And you can get an Ontario fishing license for a non-resident, right online. And that's no problem. In fact, a lot of our guests that stay up at the northwest angle, heck, they'll slide over into Ontario and fish that islands area all the time. No big deal. In fact, I should tell you too, when you stay in America, in the U.S. side of Minnesota, and you want to go over and fish on Ontario, whether it's the lake or the river, as long as you're not touching land or touching a dock or exchanging goods or services or anything, or anchoring, you can go over into Ontario and fish that all you want. Just know that you got to have an Ontario license. You can't bring any bait from the U.S. over, live, dead, frozen, nothing. So you got it when you go over there. Either you buy your bait in Canada or you use artificial bait. And you just have to know that different rules apply. You can't bring any alcohol in your boat, and there's a different limit over there and different length limits. So just know the rules. But the kicker is you don't have to call in to fish Ontario waters anymore. As long as you're not touching land, you can boat over and boat back without checking through customs.
That's a good tip. By the way, you also made it clear that it's not Baudette, it's Baudette.
It's
so.
Baudette.
You're saying alert. Hey, Joe, we're out of time. Appreciate you stopping by tonight, and have a great opener for this year. Good to see your smiling face again, man.
Good luck fishing, everybody.
All right, we'll talk later. Hey, Chad, I think we need to pull a couple winners tonight because we're running out of time tonight. So, have you picked some winners for us tonight?
I have, and it's pretty easy. We had two people really involved tonight. Elizabeth Marsh, she's going to win our Omnia Premium Pro membership, and then Pete, you're going to have to forgive me if it's Dewey or however you pronounce your last name, Diwi.
It is Dewey. Pete's a good friend of mine. He's good. Yeah. So
Pete?
It was fun to see Pete on tonight. Yeah. I didn't know he knew how to use the computer. So,
he used it really well. It was great. Yeah. So he gets the Berkeley baits. Yep.
That's awesome. So I'll have to get those out. So Elizabeth, you need to reach out to me by private message and give me your email address. And what I can do is forward the code for the Omnia Premium Pro membership. And by the way, if you guys haven't checked it out, it really is an extremely valuable tool. Things like wind direction on the lakes you're at, it helps you identify wind-blown points and spots. It actually will forecast wind direction, water temperature. I like the fact that it shows you bottom composition, so you can look at changes in bottom composition and weed growth. And it's a tremendous app, and I can't tell you how valuable it's been to me in the last year for taping lake commandos. By the way, Chad, I'm heading out tomorrow morning to western Wisconsin because they have year-round bass fishing, and we're going to try and tape our first 2025 episode of Lake Commandos tomorrow.
Let's go.
I'm excited to get out. It's been a long winter. And I had the boat out today. Everything's running. The Yamaha was purring, so we're ready to roll. But
I'm excited too.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, we got one more week for the Foster Brothers Countdown to Walleye Opener. I hope you guys can join us next Thursday night. It'll be our last show of the season. Thank you. This has been a fun chance to connect with everybody and get ready for the season. So have a good night, everybody. Good luck. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next Thursday. See you later.